All right, welcome back. Part two. Now, as we're in Unit 4.4, we've talked a lot about the kings wanting absolute power and the people wanting it to be limited power, and this deal of where we really wanted the church and the state to work together. But there's a problem here, and the problem is this thing called ego. Power control, a power trip, power hungry. And it's not just the kings that are power hungry, but it's also the popes, the leader of the Catholic Church, that is power hungry. And so the church is going to split, not because of necessarily kings, but also because of the popes, and they don't get along. And I want to give you an example. It's not on the screen here, but I think it's a really good example of what's going on between these individuals. And so we have this guy. He's a pope. His name is Pope Boniface the Eighth. That's Boniface the Eighth, and he's going up against King Philip the Fourth of France. So kings in medieval Europe are becoming more powerful. They're working to make sure that their political power is in control of them. They don't want the lords to be in charge, and they surely don't want the church or the clergy to be in charge. Now, in the past, the church was pretty much exempt from taxes. They didn't have to pay taxes. But as you've already seen, kings needed money and were willing to go wherever they could to get money. And so pretty soon, some kings, King Philip the Fourth of France being one, decided that they were going to charge the church taxes on their lands. Well, Pope Boniface the Eighth said, no, not going to happen. You can't do that. You can't tax the church. That's against the law. It's always been the way that you don't tax the church, and so you're not going to tax it. I've never been taxed before. You're not going to start now. And he told he told King Louis, he said, look, let me just tell you, or excuse me, King Philip. He said, King Philip, I just want to share with you that if you try to tax me, you're challenging the power of the church. Pope Boniface believed that the church was the supreme authority on the earth. That's important. The Pope believed that the church was more powerful than the king. And so if you start taxing the church, then Pope Boniface is saying that King Philip thinks that he is more powerful and more important than the church. So now you've got this power trip that's going on between Pope Boniface and then, of course, with King Philip. So Pope Boniface, he issues this official ruling. They're called, when they come from the head of the Catholic Church, when they come from the Pope, they're called a papal bull, Papal, and then a bull, Bull. And so he writes this document, this ruling, and he says, I am making it law that governments cannot tax the church. They cannot tax church officials unless the Pope says they can. He says, when you try to tax us, you're enslaving the church, and you don't have any right to do that, and it's not going to happen. And by the way, Pope Boniface said, King Philip, if you decide to do this and you decide to tax me, then I'm going to excommunicate you, which means I'm going to get rid of you from the church. You're no longer going to be a Catholic. You're no longer going to be a Christian. I'm going to remove that from you. So you've got the war of words that is starting here. Pope Boniface says, you can't tax me unless I tell you that you can tax me. Well, Philip's outraged. He says, fine, I'll show you how I can handle this. So he sends the military. And he sends the military to stop the church from collecting a church tax. You see, the Pope Boniface was collecting monies from the regular people that lived in the land, and he was calling it a church tax. And so King Philip says, I'm going to block you from getting that money. And that's a lot of money for the church. They needed that. And so now they're going to lose this revenue. And so Pope Boniface says, well, okay, I'm going to write another order. So he writes another papal bull. And in this one, he says, okay, King, I'm sorry. I might have spoke just a little bit too fast. I spoke a little too loud. He said, okay, now here's what I'm saying. We as the church, instead of saying you can't tax us unless I give you approval, now what I'm going to say is that the church can make voluntary contributions to the government for necessary expenses such as the defense of the nation. So he kind of gave in a little bit and said, yeah, I kind of went a little too far, but I'm going to back it down. We can give voluntary contributions. Well, King Philip wasn't happy with that. It wasn't good enough for him. And so what he did then is he took one of the Pope's messengers, one of the closest supporters of the Pope, and he charged him with a crime. He said, this guy is trying to incite a revolt against the king, and so we're going to arrest him, and we're going to put him in jail. And we might even kill him. So the king took one of the Pope's closest men and arrest him in trumped up charge. It didn't happen, but he made it sound like it happened. Well, now what we see happening is Pope Boniface really ticked off. So he writes a third letter. And this letter, the title of it's pretty interesting. If you translate it, the third letter is titled, Listen, Son. It's kind of like one of those stern, now you listen here, boy, I'm going to tell you something and you better listen. It's kind of the message that was given. However, King Philip never reads the letter. He actually burns it. He wants nothing to do. Don't you call me son. Don't tell me what I'm going to do. So he burns the letter. And so Boniface, what do you think that he does? He offers a fourth letter. He writes a fourth letter. This one, he proclaims that the popes are the supreme authority on earth. And that not only are they the supreme authority on earth, but that the kings serve at the pleasure of the Pope. And by the way, King Philip, you're now being kicked out of the church. So this just ramped up really, really high. King Philip gets mad. He sends the army. He goes to the army. The army finds Pope Boniface. They take Boniface. They beat him, kidnap him, pretty much rough him up really good. And then they release him. And then Boniface passes away. This is kind of how things start to happen. So you've got power trips going on, but then you've got the iconoclasm going on. And so the schism is not just occurring because of religious differences. There's political differences. There's social differences. You know, I mean, this thing has been going on for quite some time. So you have these little schisms that basically start taking charge here. And that's going to lead us to pretty much the last thing that we want to talk about, which is down here in 1054. This is what's known as the Great Schism. The Great Split. There's a lot of little ones, but we want to talk about the big one. This is the one that pretty much separates the Catholic Church and splits it like nothing you would have seen before. And as we look at this, we have to understand that one of the first problems is that the Roman Catholic Church decides that this creed that has been spoken for years, they decide that it needs to be updated. It's called the Nicene Creed, Nicene. And basically a creed is a statement of faith. And so they had had this statement of faith that has been around for quite some time, and it was the Christian statement of faith. And yet the Roman Catholic Church, even though they had been told, and even though they had made an agreement years and years ago that they would never change it, decides to change it. And here's what they change. The opening statement originally said, we believe in the Holy Spirit, the Lord, the giver of life, who proceeds from the Father. So basically what they're saying is that the Holy Spirit, who is the giver of life, comes from the Father. That was the original part of the Nicene Creed. Well, the Roman Church comes in and changes it, and now it says this. We believe in the Holy Spirit, the Lord, the giver of life, who proceeds from the Father and the Son. Now we start talking about this Trinity, that there's a Father who is God, who has a Son whose name is Jesus, and then there is the Holy Spirit. And so the Holy Spirit, according to the new way of writing from the Roman Catholics, the Holy Spirit comes from Jesus and God, whereas originally everybody had agreed that the Holy Spirit comes from God. So this is a big deal. And the Eastern Orthodox Church says, "Nah, not going to happen. I don't believe it. We don't support that. That's not what we're going to do." But then there's another dispute that goes on, and that is, who's going to be in charge? Who's going to be responsible? And basically what happens is you have these patriarchs who basically have roles. They have powers that they are overseeing, that they do throughout the Roman Church. And so some Roman Catholic Church in Constantinople began using Roman Catholic practices, the new way, instead of the old way or the Eastern Orthodox way. And so this ecumenical patriarch, this Eastern Orthodox patriarch, whose name was Michael Cerularius. And Cerularius, he basically comes in and says, "I demand that the churches go back to the old way of doing things." Well, Pope Leo IX, who is part of the Roman Catholic Church, he says, "No, we're not going to do that. We're going to keep doing what we're going to do." So the patriarch, Michael Cerularius, what he does is he shuts down all the churches. And he writes a letter. And the Pope reads a letter that comes from Michael saying why he shut the churches down in Constantinople. And the Pope addresses the points. And he says, "Listen, I'm the Pope. I'm in charge. You're not. So you need to listen to what I say." So the Pope sends the letter by a group of people, and they walk in 1054, and they go to Patriarch Michael Cerularius, and they say, "We've got this letter, and we need to read it to you." And the delegation doesn't like the way that they were welcomed, and so they give him the letter, and they walk out and saying, "We don't appreciate the way that you're treating us, and you should be listening to the Pope, and you're just basically a loser." And Cerularius doesn't like their actions. He doesn't like what they've done. And then he reads the letters, and he is extremely upset. So he decides, well, I'm going to ignore the Pope. I'm going to ignore what the Pope says and what the Pope does. Well, Leo dies in 1054, and after the Patriarch Cerularius refuses to meet with the delegates from the Pope, the delegates will basically enter this huge church of the Eastern Orthodox faith. And they walk in during a church ceremony, and they take the letter from the Pope that Michael has refused to really acknowledge and do anything with. And they take this letter and they put it on the altar. And it says, "This is a letter that is kicking you, Patriarch Michael Cerularius, out of the church." Well, Patriarch Michael Cerularius, what did he do with the letter? You know what he did. He took that letter, he condemned the delegates, and he burned it. And right there, as he burned that letter at the altar in the Eastern Orthodox Church in Constantinople, that will have the Great Schism becoming official. They'll still communicate, they'll still talk. However, basically, any attempts to reconcile will fail. And today, the two sides still have not reconciled. They have contact, and they've tried to, but even today, all these years later, the church, the Roman Catholic Church, is split. Roman Catholics, Eastern Orthodox. Some similarities, as you can see, but a lot of differences. Roman Catholics in Latin, Eastern Orthodox Greek. Pope has authority, Eastern Orthodox Patriarch. Roman Catholic, Pope claims authority over kings. Eastern Orthodox, basically it's the emperor has power. Eastern Orthodox, priest may be married. Roman Catholic, of course, priest may not marry. Roman Catholic, divorce is not permitted. Eastern Orthodox, divorce is allowed. So you can see there's some main differences. This is in the 11th century, but it's still in existence even today. Yes, there are some similarities, but there's a lot of differences. It's interesting how history doesn't pay attention to the past and continues to do the same thing over and over.